I want to talk about something you address in your book, and it's something that we see taking place in Washington today. At the time, coming close to the conclusion of World War II, we got together for Bretton Woods. We had a chance to clean the slate, to return to a gold standard and put the world on a sound financial standing. We didn't do that. We were influenced by John Maynard Keynes and Harry Dexter White. But, you know, in addition to being influenced by those men, the one thing I do know about reading Keynes, he said, look, if you get into a deficit or a recession, government spends money. But he also put in, when the economy returns, you get economic growth, then you balance your books, you pay down your debt. Well, politicians got one part of Keynes, which was stimulation. We've been in constant stimulation. I have never seen, at least in my lifetime, where politicians talked about pulling back, paying down debt, and taking out some of the surplus money that was created. The question I have is, we had a chance to get it right. We didn't. We made mistakes, and here we are in another crisis, which I'm sure will be followed by another crisis, and we're using the same prescription. Wasn't it Einstein said the definition of stupidity is doing something over and over again, expecting a different result?
Well, that Bretton Woods conference is a very important part of my book, and it's glossed over in the history books in our our so-called educational institutions. At that conference, it was in 1944. Yes, you're right. It was to put the country on a sound basis. But they chose two people. First of all, Keynes was a socialist. And second of all, Harry Dexter White was rumored to be a communist. I remember it. But I didn't pay much attention to it because there was no proof. Well, the Soviet archives have been opened, and they indeed acknowledge that he was a communist spy. And you can look this up in Wikipedia. I'm not making this up. Check it out for yourself. So you had a socialist and a communist who was dedicated to destroying, first of all, he wanted to destroy the German currency to make sure the country would never recover. But he turned his attention to Keynes and the American currency. Now, if you were trying to structure a currency with that background, how would you do it? I think one of the most exciting parts of the book is a quote of Keynes' interview of Lenin in 1918. And I've quoted the whole passage. Keynes is often misquoted as having said that the surest way to undermine a country is to debauch its currency. The surest way to undermine a country is to debauch its currency. But he didn't actually say that. He was quoting Lenin. Well, I got hold of that whole interview, and I published it in this book. And it is a mind-blowing read because it shows the blueprint of what was done after that. When I was just starting out as a junior security analyst, and I recommended gold at $35, and they fired me on Wall Street from it because it was such an outrageous position to say that I thought gold was going up when the government swore they would never allow it. But I didn't really understand what was going on at that point. It took me decades to work it all out, which I put in the book. What was going on was I didn't like the Federal Reserve, and I didn't like Bretton Woods because they insisted that the price of gold would never go up. I, however, was very clear that you cannot tie a paper currency to paper gold and keep printing gold without having the price go up also. You can't say that each ounce of gold is worth 35 pieces of paper and then keep printing paper and hold the price there. So I knew that the price of gold had to go up, and I couldn't understand why the people around me didn't accept it immediately. But the Bretton Woods had so solidified the negativity toward gold and that it would never go above $35 that my position looked preposterous. It was straight math. It had to happen. I knew it. And it was one of the defining moments of my career when they threatened to fire me if I didn't recant and say that the price of gold would never go up. And I could have stayed there and been a prostitute and made believe I didn't see it. I'm not insulting prostitutes, by the way, because we have some politicians who could fit that word. But anyway, when I realized that, I realized that Bretton Woods was my enemy, but I didn't really understand what was going on there. What was going on there was an attempt to debauch the currency, and I was bumping up a Soviet spy who would not be unmasked until the Soviet Union opened up its archives to the world and said that, yes, he was. Of course, he's safely dead by now, as all those people are. But that's what was going on in Bretton Woods, and you can't understand what happened to gold after that until you understand that. And also the Genoa Conference before it, and before that, the seizure of gold in the 1800s. You cannot understand what's happening to gold and the currencies and the world today without a linear comprehension of what is going on and what has gone on before it.